The Stone Age, where humanity began. What was life like millions of years before cities, writing, or even metal tools? Welcome to the Stone Age, the longest and most transformative chapter of human history, stretching from about 3.3 million years ago to around 5,000 years ago. This vast era is divided into three main phases: Paleolithic Old Stone Age, Mesolithic Middle Stone Age, Neolithic New Stone Age. The Paleolithic, humanity's first steps. The story begins with early hominins, our distant ancestors who first shaped crude stone tools. Some of the earliest evidence comes from Kenya, where archaeologists discovered sharp flakes and hammerstones used for hunting, butchering, and processing plants. These simple tools gave early humans a survival edge. Species like Homo habilis and later Homo erectus marked major leaps forward. Homo erectus wasn't just a toolmaker, it was the first to control fire, a revolutionary skill that made cooking safer, kept predators away, and sparked social gatherings around campfires. It also became the first human species to migrate out of Africa, spreading through Asia and Europe. Life in the Paleolithic was harsh but inventive. People lived in small, nomadic bands, surviving through hunting and gathering. Yet, they also expressed creativity. Cave paintings in places like Lascaux, France, reveal early art, spirituality, and imagination. Around 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans, emerged. Smarter, more adaptable, and more collaborative. They eventually replaced other hominids like the Neanderthals through a mix of competition, interbreeding, and resilience. The Mesolithic, the world melts and humans adapt. Around 12,000 years ago, the last ice age ended, reshaping climates and ecosystems. This Mesolithic period became a time of transition. Humans developed more advanced tools, like microliths, tiny blades that could be attached to arrows and spears. They began fishing, taming small animals, and settling near rivers and coastlines. For the first time, some communities stayed in one place for longer periods, setting the stage for agriculture. But competition over land also grew. Early signs of conflict appeared alongside cooperation. The Neolithic, farming changes everything. Then came the Neolithic Revolution, around 10,000 BC, a turning point that changed human life forever. Instead of chasing food, people began growing it. Across regions like the Fertile Crescent, modern Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, China's Yellow River Valley, and Mesoamerica, humans learned to cultivate crops such as wheat, barley, rice, and maize. They domesticated animals, sheep, goats, cattle, which provided food, labor, and materials. These breakthroughs led to permanent villages and booming populations. With stability came complexity. Early forms of governance, religion, and trade began to appear. What made the Bronze Age so revolutionary, and why did it end in mystery? Spanning roughly from 3000 to 1200 BC, the Bronze Age marked one of humanity's greatest leaps forward. For the first time, people across much of the world mastered the art of mixing copper and tin to create bronze, a durable metal that reshaped everything from warfare and agriculture to art and trade. But bronze was just the beginning. This era gave birth to the world's first true civilization: societies with cities, writing, organized governments, monumental architecture, and large-scale warfare. The world was no longer a scattering of villages. It was becoming a network of kingdoms and empires. Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. The Bronze Age dawned earliest in the Near East, around 3300 BC. There, in southern Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, the Sumerians built the world's first cities. Uruk and Ur ruled by kings who claimed divine authority. The Sumerians also gave us cuneiform, the earliest known writing system. What began as simple accounting soon expanded to include laws, myths, and poetry. Among their works is the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving pieces of literature exploring mortality, heroism, and humanity's relationship with the gods. Egypt, kingdom of the pharaohs. Meanwhile, along the Nile, Egypt was unified around 3100 BC under Pharaoh Narmer, launching the early dynastic period. Egyptian civilization soon produced wonders that still awe the world today: the pyramids of Giza, temples, and tombs that stood as symbols of divine kingship and cosmic order. Egyptian society was deeply religious and remarkably advanced. Their achievements in medicine, engineering, and mathematics, along with their hieroglyphic writing, made Egypt one of the most influential civilizations of the Bronze Age. The Indus Valley, a hidden giant, Farther east, the Indus Valley Civilization to 600-1900 BC flourished in what is now Pakistan and northwest India. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa featured precise grid layouts, advanced drainage systems, and standardized measurements, proof of an organized and technologically sophisticated culture. Although their writing remains undeciphered, archaeological evidence suggests a thriving trade network that may have reached Mesopotamia. China. The rise of the Shang dynasty. In China, the Shang dynasty emerged around 1600 BC, leaving behind rich archaeological finds including early Chinese script carved on oracle bones. The Shang ruled through a feudal system, waged frequent wars, and used bronze not only for weapons, but also for elaborate ritual vessels symbolizing power and legitimacy. The Aegean world, Minoans and Mycenaeans. Across the Aegean Sea, two great cultures rose and fell. On Crete, the Minoans, centered at Knossos, became skilled sailors and artists, creating the mysterious linear script. But their civilization suffered a devastating blow around 1600 BC, when a volcanic eruption on Thera Santorini struck, likely paving the way for the Mycenaeans of mainland Greece to take over. The Mycenaeans adopted Minoan influences, developed the linear B script, and built fortified palace complexes. They would later inspire the heroes and legends of Homeric Greece. War, peace, and the world's first treaty. Conflict and diplomacy defined much of the Bronze Age. One of the earliest recorded battles, the Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BC, pitted Pharaoh Ramses II of Egypt against King Muwatalli II of the Hittites in Anatolia, modern Turkey. Though fierce, the battle ended not with total victory, but with the world's first known peace treaty, a landmark in international diplomacy. The Hittites, masters of chariot warfare and law, were a major military power of their time, showing just how interconnected and competitive the Bronze Age world had become. The mysterious collapse. Then, round 1200 BC, it all fell apart. Major cities burned, trade routes vanished, and literacy nearly disappeared. Historians call this the Late Bronze Age collapse, a cataclysmic event that toppled empires from Greece to Mesopotamia. What caused it? Theories range from natural disasters and droughts to internal revolts and invasions by the enigmatic sea peoples. Whatever the cause, the old world ended and a new one was waiting to begin. A legacy that endured. Despite its dramatic fall, the Bronze Age forever changed human civilization. It gave rise to states, written law, organized religion, science, trade, and empire, the building blocks of the modern world. It was the age when humanity first mapped the stars, wrote poetry, built monuments, and dreamed of eternity. And even as the bronze faded, its brilliance set the stage for the Iron Age and everything that came after. A time of transformation, 12th century BC, 500 BC. The Iron Age, which spanned from around 1200 BC to 500 BC, was a transformative period in human history. It was marked by the rise of new civilizations, the rise and fall of powerful empires, and significant advances in warfare, governance, and culture. Iron, more abundant and durable than bronze, revolutionized weaponry and tools, leading to stronger agricultural implements and weaponry. This shift sparked population growth and territorial expansion across the ancient world. The collapse and the rise of new powers. Following the collapse of the Late Bronze Age, a power vacuum opened up, allowing smaller and previously marginalized societies to rise to prominence. One of the most significant new powers during this period was the Assyrian Empire in Mesopotamia. By the 9th century BC, the Neo-Assyrian Empire had become the most dominant military power in the Near East. The Assyrians utilized iron weapons, advanced siege tactics, and a highly developed system of roads and communication to maintain an empire that stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. Flourishing kingdoms and civilizations. In the Levant, smaller kingdoms flourished. The Israelites established the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, with Jerusalem becoming a political and religious center. The Philistines, often in conflict with the Israelites, played a key role in the geopolitics of Canaan, likely of Aegean origin. The Philistines were a dominant coastal group during this era. Along the coast of modern-day Lebanon, the Phoenicians, based in cities like Tyre and Sidon, became renowned for their maritime skills and expansive trade networks. They are credited with developing one of the first phonetic alphabets, which later influenced Greek and Latin scripts. The Phoenicians established colonies across the Mediterranean, including the powerful city of Carthage in North Africa. The rise of Anatolian civilizations. In Anatolia, the collapse of the Hittite Empire led to the rise of new groups like the Phrygians and later the Lydians. The Lydians are particularly notable for their invention of coinage around the 7th century BC, which revolutionized trade by creating standardized and efficient forms of economic exchange. Eastward expansion, the Medes and Persians. Meanwhile, in the east, the Medes and later the Persians rose to power in the Iranian plateau. These groups eventually formed one of the greatest empires in ancient history, the Persian Empire, which would dominate the Near East for centuries. India and the Vedic transition. In the Indian subcontinent, the Iron Age is associated with the later Vedic period. During this time, Indo-Aryan societies transitioned from pastoralism to settled agriculture and urbanization. The caste system became more rigid, and the foundations of classical Hinduism were laid through texts like the Upanishads, which would influence Indian culture for millennia. China's Iron Age, a time of philosophical and political upheaval. China's Iron Age corresponded with the latter part of the Zhou dynasty, particularly during the Eastern Zhou period. This era, marked by the Spring and Autumn period, was one of political fragmentation and intellectual flourishing. It was during this time that Confucius and other philosophical traditions like Taoism and legalism took shape. Although the Zhou kings retained symbolic authority, real power lay with feudal lords who were constantly vying for control, leading to frequent warfare and political instability. Europe. Iron Age warriors and traders. In Europe, the Iron Age began a bit later, but saw significant cultural developments. The Hallstatt culture in Central Europe and the Latini culture in Western Europe represented the high points of Celtic civilization. These societies were tribal but highly organized, with skilled metalworkers and intricate art styles. Warfare became more intense and large-scale during this period, driven by the superior quality of iron weaponry. The end of the Assyrian Empire and the dawn of classical civilizations. The ancient world became increasingly complex, with states forming alliances, waging wars, and engaging in diplomacy. One of the most notable conflicts of the Iron Age was the series of Assyrian campaigns against rebellious states, culminating in the collapse of the Assyrian Empire around 612 BC. Coalition of Medes, Babylonians, and other groups played a key role in its downfall. By 500 BC, the foundations for the classical civilizations of Greece, Persia, India, and China had been firmly established. These societies, shaped by the technological advancements, new forms of governance, and cultural innovations of the Iron Age, would go on to influence the course of human history for centuries to come. The age that shaped civilization. What makes an age truly classical? Between 500 BC and at 580, human societies built the foundations of government, philosophy, religion, and art that still define much of our world today. One of the most influential cultures of this era was ancient Greece. By 500 BC, city-states like Athens, Sparta, and Corinth had grown in both wealth and political complexity. Athens pioneered the earliest known form of democracy limited to free male citizens, while Sparta stood apart with its disciplined, militaristic oligarchy. When Persia invaded, the Greeks set aside their rivalries and united in the legendary Greco-Persian Wars 4994-49 BC. Victories at Marathon, Salamis, and Plataea not only preserved Greek independence, but also laid the groundwork for the Golden Age of Athens. The 5th century BC became a dazzling era of progress in architecture, drama, history, and philosophy. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle redefined how humans understood truth, ethics, and reason, ideas that became the cornerstone of Western thought. But prosperity has its limits. The Peloponnesian War for 31404 BC between Athens and Sparta shattered Greek unity. In its wake, Greece fell under Macedonian influence, first under Philip II and then his son, Alexander the Great. Alexander's campaigns became the stuff of legend. By his death in 323 BC, he had conquered Persia, Egypt, and parts of India, spreading Greek culture across 3 continents. His empire gave birth to Hellenism, a powerful blend of Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian traditions that reshaped art, science, and philosophy across the ancient world. While Greece's power waned, a new force was rising in Italy. Rome. The Roman Republic, founded in 509 BC after the overthrow of its monarchy, established a remarkably balanced system of governance dividing authority among consuls, the Senate, and citizen assemblies. Through a mix of military conquest and diplomacy, Rome gradually unified the Italian peninsula. The Punic Wars against Carthage, especially the Second Punic War 218-201 BC, secured Rome's dominance over the Mediterranean. Yet as Rome expanded, internal conflicts brewed. Power struggles, corruption, and the rise of military leaders like Julius Caesar tore at the fabric of the Republic. Caesar's assassination in 44 BC plunged Rome into further chaos, until his adopted heir, Octavian, later Augustus, emerged victorious. In 27 BC, Augustus became the first Roman emperor, ushering in 2 centuries of relative peace and prosperity known as the Pax Romana. During this time, Roman engineering, law, and architecture reached new heights. The Romans built vast roads, aqueducts, and monuments like the Colosseum and the Pantheon. Latin literature flourished under writers such as Virgil, Ovid, and Cicero, whose works shaped European education for centuries. Meanwhile, the spiritual world was changing too. In India, the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, spread across Asia, forming the foundation of Buddhism. Hinduism also evolved, producing many of its most revered texts. In China, Confucianism became the moral and political philosophy of the Han Dynasty, 206 BC to 220, promoting meritocracy, order, and respect within a strong centralized state. And in the Roman province of Judea, a new faith began to take shape. The teachings of Jesus of Nazareth and his followers would grow into Christianity, spreading rapidly despite persecution. What really happened during the Middle Ages is that mysterious, in between, time between the fall of Rome and the dawn of the Renaissance? Was it truly a dark and stagnant age, or a complex chapter of transformation, faith, and innovation? The medieval era, stretching roughly from 500 to 1500 AD, began as the Roman Empire crumbled and Europe reshaped itself. In the chaos that followed Rome's collapse, new kingdoms emerged from former barbarian tribes. Among them, the Franks rose to prominence under King Clovis in the 5th century, uniting much of what is now France and Western Germany. A few centuries later, Charlemagne, Charles the Great, expanded this realm into the vast Carolingian Empire. When Pope Leo III crowned him Emperor of the Romans in 800 AD, the dream of a Western Roman Empire briefly flickered back to life, binding church and state more tightly than ever. During this era, the Roman Catholic Church became Europe's spiritual anchor. The Pope held immense authority, while monasteries preserved classical knowledge, copied manuscripts, and fostered education. In the East, the Byzantine Empire flourished with its majestic capital, Constantinople, a city of dazzling wealth, art, and scholarship. Meanwhile, Islam, born in the 7th century through the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, expanded rapidly across the Middle East, North Africa, and into Spain. Under the Umayyad and Abbasid caliphates, the Islamic world experienced a golden age of science, philosophy, and medicine. Cities like Baghdad and Rhoda became global centers of learning where Greek, Roman, and Persian ideas were studied, translated, and transformed. The Crusades, beginning in 1096, were a defining feature of the High Middle Ages. European Christians launched military campaigns to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim rule. Though the First Crusade captured Jerusalem, later ones ended in disaster and bloodshed. Yet, they also sparked trade and cultural exchange, exposing Europe to new technologies, foods, and ideas from the Islamic world. Across Northern and Eastern Europe, the Vikings left their mark. From the 8th to the 11th centuries, Norse raiders turned settlers, built new states, including the Danelaw in England and Kievan Rus in present-day Ukraine and Russia. Over time, many converted to Christianity and joined Europe's growing feudal order, a system built on land, loyalty, and military service. Castles, knights, and the code of chivalry came to define this world. But the Middle Ages were not without catastrophe. The Black Death, 1347-1351, swept through Europe, killing nearly a third of its population. This plague shattered communities, weakened feudalism, and raised the bargaining power of common laborers. Meanwhile, the 100 Years' War 1337-1453 between England and France brought endless conflict and technological change. The longbow and gunpowder weapons rendered traditional knightly warfare obsolete. Out of this turmoil emerged Joan of Arc, the peasant girl who became a warrior saint and national icon before her execution in 1431. Despite war and disease, the later Middle Ages saw remarkable progress. New universities in Paris, Oxford, and Bologna turned theology, law, and philosophy into organized fields of study. Thinkers like Thomas Aquinas sought to reconcile faith with reason. Everyday life also improved thanks to innovations like the heavy plow, windmill, and mechanical clock. And in the 15th century, Johannes Gutenberg's invention of the printing press transformed communication, spreading knowledge faster than ever before and paving the way for the Renaissance. By the late 1400s, the medieval world was giving way to something entirely new. The fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Turks. In 1453 ended the Byzantine Empire, while Christopher Columbus's voyage across the Atlantic in 1492 launched the Age of Discovery. Europe was on the brink of an intellectual and global awakening. The so-called Dark Ages had laid the very foundations for modern civilization, a time of exploration, revolution, and change. The early modern era, spanning from the 15th to the 18th century, was marked by transformative events that reshaped the world. Key developments like the Age of Exploration, the rise of powerful nation-states, and the scientific revolution played pivotal roles in shaping the modern world. The Age of Exploration. One of the most defining features of this period was the Age of Exploration. European powers, driven by the pursuit of wealth, trade routes, and territorial expansion, set out on voyages that would connect the globe in unprecedented ways. Portuguese explorers, such as Vasco da Gama, pioneered sea routes to India, while Christopher Columbus, sailing for Spain in 1492, crossed the Atlantic and reached the Americas. These discoveries ignited the Columbian exchange of vast transfer of plants, animals, people, and diseases between the Old and New Worlds. While European economies flourished from this exchange, the impact on indigenous populations in the Americas was catastrophic. Smallpox and other diseases devastated native communities, leading to massive population declines. As European colonial empires expanded, Spain established dominance over large parts of Central and South America, exploiting both the land and the indigenous labor force. Meanwhile, British, French, and Dutch colonies grew in North America. The transatlantic slave trade emerged during this period, forcibly transporting millions of Africans to the Americas to work on plantations. This brutal system became a pillar of the Atlantic economy, generating immense wealth, but at a horrific human cost. Religious and political upheaval. The Protestant Reformation, sparked by Martin Luther's 95 Theses in 1517, radically altered Europe's religious and political landscape. It challenged the authority of the Catholic Church and led to the creation of Protestant denominations. The Reformation triggered a series of religious conflicts, most notably the 30 Years' War, 1618-1648, a destructive conflict that ravaged much of Europe. In response, the Catholic Church launched the Counter-Reformation, aiming to address internal abuses and reaffirm traditional doctrines. The Reformation and Counter-Reformation set the stage for the religious and political struggles that would unfold across Europe for centuries. The Scientific Revolution. The 16th and 17th centuries also saw the dawn of the Scientific Revolution, a period in which traditional views of the universe were challenged. Pioneers like Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, and Newton revolutionized our understanding of the natural world. Copernicus introduced the heliocentric model of the solar system, while Galileo's telescope observations provided further evidence. Despite strong opposition from the Church, in 1687, Isaac Newton's Principia Mathematica laid the foundations for classical mechanics, offering groundbreaking theories on motion and gravity. Humanity's greatest transformation. How did humanity change so rapidly in just a few centuries? From the late 18th century to today, the modern era has reshaped the world more than any other time in history. It began with the Industrial Revolution in Britain, which soon spread across Europe, North America, and beyond. Societies shifted from farming to factories, from villages to vast cities, and from manual labor to mechanized production. Steam engines, railroads, and new machines revolutionized industries like textiles, mining, and transportation. Cities grew explosively as millions sought work, giving rise to the industrial working class. Productivity soared, but so did pollution, inequality, and grueling labor conditions, even child labor. Revolutions and rising nations. The 19th century brought not just machines, but ideas. Inspired by Enlightenment values, revolutions in America and France fueled global calls for liberty and equality. Napoleon's conquest spread these ideals across Europe before his fall at Waterloo. Despite efforts to restore monarchies, nationalism surged. In 1848, revolution swept Europe, demanding democracy and unity. The unifications of Italy and Germany in 1871 reshaped the continent, especially Germany, which became a powerful industrial state under Bismarck. Meanwhile, European empires expanded overseas, in a scramble for Africa, exploiting land and people while fueling global rivalries. World wars and power shifts. The 20th century opened with catastrophe. World War I 1914-1918 erupted from nationalism, alliances, and militarism. Trench warfare, machine guns, and poison gas defined the horror. The Treaty of Versailles punished Germany harshly, setting the stage for another conflict. After the Great Depression, fascism rose in Europe. Hitler's Nazi regime led the Axis powers into World War II. Opposed by the Allies, mainly the US, Soviet Union, and UK, the war ended with Germany's defeat, the atomic bombings of Japan, and the dawn of the nuclear age, the Cold War and the technological boom. Following the US and Soviet Union entered the Cold War, a tense standoff between capitalism and communism. Proxy wars erupted in Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, while both sides raced to build nukes and conquer space. The rivalry ended with the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991. Meanwhile, science and technology reshaped life. Electricity, telephones, computers, and the internet transformed communication. In 1969, humans walked on the moon. Medicine advanced rapidly, eradicating diseases like smallpox and extending life expectancy. Social movements for civil rights, gender equality, and LGBTQ+ freedoms further redefine justice and human rights. Globalization and the 21st century. Today, globalization links the world through trade, travel, and technology. Cultures blend, economies intertwine, but challenges persist. Climate change, pandemics, inequality, and political division test our progress. Humanity stands at a crossroads, just as it did at the dawn of industry. The Stone Age, humanity's first revolution, stretching from 3.3 million to 5,000 years ago. The Stone Age was humanity's longest chapter. It's divided into 3 stages: Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic. In the Paleolithic era, early humans like Homo habilis and Homo erectus crafted the first stone tools, hunted animals, and mastered 5 vital steps toward survival. During the Mesolithic, as the Ice Age ended, humans adapted to new environments, built semi-permanent homes, and began fishing and herding. Then came the Neolithic Revolution around 10,000 BC. People in the Fertile Crescent began farming wheat and barley, domesticating animals, and settling permanently. Villages like Adelhike and Jericho emerged, showing early urban planning and social cooperation. Pottery, weaving, and monuments like Stonehenge appeared, laying the groundwork for civilization itself. By 3000 BC, the Bronze Age had begun, but the Stone Age had already given humanity its most crucial gift, the power to shape the world. Conclusion: from the first spark of fire to the digital age, every era has built upon the last. The Stone Age gave us survival, the modern age gave us transformation, and the future, still unwritten, will depend on how wisely we use the progress we've made.